welcome Ibrahim, our cybersecurity account manager, as today's speaker. He is with over 10 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry. He worked closely with companies to help them stay ahead of evolving cyber threats. He is also a certified ethical hacker, CEH, and Microsoft certified professional. We also like to thank our partners LinkAxia and Barracuda for their support and participation in today's webinar. And as a special bonus, attendees who stay until the end can claim a free email threat scanner for Microsoft 365. All right, so let's get started. I will now hand it over to Ibrahim to start the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, Manpreet, for the introduction. So I just want to make sure everyone can see our slides. Can you just indicate maybe on the chat that if you can see the slide clearly? Okay, so before we dive into our topic for today, I just want to do a quick housekeeping just to share our rules for the day. I believe some of you might be wondering if you want to ask questions and things like that. Please feel free to drop your questions on the chat. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so we'll be responding to all your questions there. So, and some of you might be thinking, can I view this presentation after the webinar? Yes, the session is being recorded. We will actually share the recording to you if you request it. You just send us an email, and then we will be happy to share the link to you as well. So of course, we are providing additional support after this at the end of the webinar. If you're interested in additional information, or as Manpreet mentioned just now, we are actually offering a free email threat scanner, courtesy of Barracuda, right? To basically help you to scan on your email threats. And for today's session, I do have my colleagues as well that will be supporting me. I have Adrian Tan and also Melvin as well, basically from our partner LinkAxia, to support us on this webinar for today. So what we'll be covering, we'll just do a very quick introduction about Condition Zebra, what we do, what we offer, and then we dive into the cybersecurity threat landscape. We go into like the key email security practices and also how to spot and also block phishing, malware, and also ransomware attacks. Basically, common email security mistakes and how to fix them, and also some practical steps that you can implement to basically improve the security within your organization, right? And lastly, we have a Q&A session where we'll answer all the questions that you drop in the chat, and then we'll go through from there. So about Condition Zebra, we are actually a cybersecurity company, basically in Malaysia. We have been now in this industry for about 18 years. And we basically have completed more than 1,000 cybersecurity assessment projects and basically consultations. We have trained more than 6,000 people in terms of professional IT security programs. And we are also accredited by CREST, right? And we are licensed by NACSA in Malaysia. In Singapore, we are also licensed by CSRO. We are also ISO 27001 certified or ISMS certified. And we have also won the award for Cybersecurity Education and Training Provider of the Year. And lastly, we are also HRDF approved training provider, right? So we actually started out as a training provider in the cybersecurity space, and then we slowly expanded the business to provide other areas. So right now we cover IT security assessments. We do basically forensic investigations, managed security services, and also still providing IT security training as well, right? So in a bit more detail, this is basically more on the services that we are providing. So if any of you have a requirement or you would like to know more about any of these services, please reach out to us and we will happy to advise on that as well. All right. So on the cyber risk management, we also have IT security training, basically technical courses for the IT teams. Right. We have physical sessions, online classes, and also cybersecurity awareness training for the end users or the non-IT people. And we also still providing managed security services. So things like EDR, XDR, SOC, SIEM, and things like that. Right. So I'm very, very excited to talk on this topic for today, basically covering on email security, right? So before we dive into that, it's good for us to see what is happening out there, right? What are the cybersecurity threats that are happening out there and the landscape at the moment? So according to these statistics by Kaspersky, right, 64% of organizations have actually been victims of ransomware attacks. And out of this 64% of the organization, 79% have actually paid the ransom to the attackers, right? So this is something very alarming. You might start to wonder, why is there so many phishing attacks or ransomware attacks happening? It's basically, one of the reasons is this, because there is a very lucrative business, right? Usually you don't hear in the news when these things happen. It's very seldom, but a lot of attacks are happening. And according to this information from IBM as well, 4.35 million is actually the cost. $4.35 million is actually the cost, the average cost for a breach that relates to business email compromise, or BEC. And it actually takes 4 minutes for one of your users to click on a bad link or bad URL, right? And it will take about 3 hours per day, which is actually the time spent by the SOC teams to manually basically triage or investigate these kind of alerts. And now we are also always talking about AI, this AI. Of course, AI also presents a new challenge whereby there are threats that are led by AI, right? So AI is making it more easier for people to perform cyber attacks, and is basically frustrating the cybersecurity professionals, right? So this is something that we come across, that Amazon actually reports they are receiving nearly 1 billion cyber attacks on a daily basis, right? So which is something very interesting. This is not human being doing these attacks. Of course, it's all automated AIs. And it also brings us to the age of AI versus AI, because Amazon is implementing AI to help to protect their systems, and the attackers are also using AI to attack them, right? So this also brings us to the reason why we chose this topic for today, right? So according to these statistics by CERT Malaysia, so CERT Malaysia is the Computer Emergency Response Team for Malaysia. They actually receive all the notifications when this kind of cybersecurity incidents or issues happen within Malaysia, and they have correlated the information, and they come up with this graphics or the statistics, whereby we can see the trend. Basically, fraud is one of the highest types of cyber crimes or cyber attacks that is happening. So fraud, of course, can be various kind of approaches, but usually will be through official channels like email and things like that. So this is why we actually chose to also highlight this topic for today. Right. So when we talk about cyber threats or cybersecurity in general, right, what are we talking about? So whenever we talk about cybersecurity or information security, we have to keep in mind 3 things, right? What we call the CIA triad, right? The confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So confidentiality has to do with, should this information be disclosed or not, right? Should it be public information, or should it be kept private and secret, right? And then the information, is it accurate? So talking about the integrity, right? And then the availability, right? So these are the 3 main pillars of cybersecurity: the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So just to denote that, right, we have an example here. So let's say I visit a e-market or e-commerce platform, for example, like Shopee, Lazada, or even I go to an banking website like Maybank or CIMB Bank, right? I would like to see that first thing, whatever I do should be confidential. So whatever I purchase or whatever transactions I perform should be kept private to me and confidential, right? And then, of course, the integrity. So let's say today I log into my banking application. I would like to see that my balance is the same as I left it, right? If I didn't do a transaction, it should be the same. But what if situation whereby my balance yesterday was 5,000, then today it's 2,000, right? And I didn't do transactions. So of course, this is talking about integrity, or basically the validity of the information, right? And lastly is availability, right? So I will also want to know that whenever I go to this e-commerce website or my banking app, I would like to see that it's always available. When it's down, of course, it brings concerns to the user, right? They will think, what happened to this platform? And it affects the integrity and confidentiality and availability. So this is something I would like to just do a quick check here, according from the audience here. So who do you think is responsible for information security? Right? So if you have any answers, feel free to drop it on the chat box. Who do you think should be responsible for information security in an organization? Okay, good. Good. We're having some great answers. Yeah, so the trend seems to be everyone agrees that it is everyone's responsibility, right? Everyone should be responsible for cybersecurity or information security. So the way I try to imagine information security within an organization, right? I try to think of it as a pipeline, right? So you try to imagine, let's say you're going to connect a pipeline from KL down to Johor Bahru, a very long pipeline. Of course, you cannot get one single pipeline to do that, right? It's a chain of connections of pipelines, right? So I like to imagine cybersecurity in organization in this same way, right? The information is flowing from one point to one point, and at each point is a connection, right? Is a connection, and each of this connection is a one person. So you want to make sure that the information flows securely. Then at each point, each individual has to take care of their own part, right? Everyone has to be responsible for their own portion. So whenever it gets to my part of the pipeline, I need to make sure it's secure. Then I pass it to the next guy. The next guy needs to make sure it's secure. They pass it to the next lady, like that, and so on, right? So this is the best way to think about information security within the organization. It's not a thing that you can think of it as individual, like everyone is doing their own, or someone will say, oh, it's just IT team responsibility. This is a very common mindset among a lot of users or non-IT people. They try to think that, hey, cybersecurity is responsibility of IT department. We have IT people, they do this firewall, implement a lot of things, but it's not the right thing, right? So just to denote that as well, I have a very short, simple graphics here, right? This is quite old, but surprisingly still very valid in today's world. So let's say imagine a boxing match, right? Between, on one corner, you have data security, and on the other side, you have human error, right? So who do you think is going to win this match? All right. So of course, the IT team or data security team have implemented firewalls, antivirus, DLP, encryption. A lot of security things are in place, right? But it only takes Dave here on this corner to bring down the whole infrastructure or the whole security architecture, right? Because let's say today, even with all the security in place, if Dave goes and reveals his password or credentials to an unauthorized party, or Dave goes and click a malicious email or something like that, it can compromise the whole effort that is being done by the data security or cybersecurity team, right? So that's why in cybersecurity, the most critical part or the most important factor is the human being, right? Because human error is the weak link in information security. So usually a lot of us think of like the OSI layers, right? The 7 OSI layers, but of course we have to also think about the layer 8, right? So the layer 8 of the OSI model, the user, right? So we have to put in user as part of our consideration as well. And this is important, as I mentioned, because not just the machines can be hacked or the devices, even human beings can be hacked as well, all right? So just to illustrate that as well, I have a very brief example here. I believe most of us here has heard about this news that Maybank's CFO has recently been terminated, right? And this is someone that has been with the organization for 30 years, right? But due to a very simple or easy phishing case, right, it actually led to the termination of the group CEO of Maybank. Of course, you can imagine a very huge organization like Maybank, which is a bank. They have compliances, PCI, a lot of security things in place, processes and controls. But surprisingly, an attacker is able to get to the topmost level of that organization, and they actually can lead to a cyber attack that led to the ouster of the CFO of the organization. So how did this happen? I just want to do a very quick case study for us to see what happened in this case and how to basically to avoid this kind of incidents, right? So we have a very short timeline here to go through, right? Try to imagine this as a phishing attack that's happening to a very large organization like Maybank, right? You would think organization like Maybank will have internal communication channels and all this, right? But surprisingly, this is what happened. Right, so this attacker actually sent a text message at 7 a.m. to the CFO of Maybank, the group CFO, sent a text message via personal number from an unknown number and asking this Maybank CFO for a certain transaction, for transfer of money, right? And in fact, a very huge amount, close to $1 million, right? And this person claims to be the CEO of Maybank Singapore, right? So of course you would think, hey, this is something quite unusual, right? Maybank Singapore and CFO of the group should have certain communication which is official, but surprisingly in this case, the attacker is able to manipulate this particular individual, right? And the person actually asked, right, this supposed CEO of Maybank Singapore is asking the CFO of the CFO of the group how much is the balance amount for Maybank Singapore, and then they responded. But of course, this person also tried to verify. So they had a call, right? I believe via Zoom, right, to basically discuss on this. And this person is able to, I guess, use AI or something to impersonate the actual CEO of Singapore, right, to be able to convince the CFO, and the CFO actually authorized the payment, right? So of course, one thing with attackers in this case, they will try to create urgency, right? So they try to ask for help, try to ask for personal things that, okay, can we try to bypass the process because it's very urgent, right? So in this case, they use all this urgency and they try to trick the CFO. And basically the CFO eventually authorizes the payment to be done via JP Morgan Bank, right? Luckily, JP Morgan has certain controls and checks, and they basically stopped the transaction. So they didn't authorize this transaction to move forward. But at night, about 9 p.m., the CFO of Maybank basically calls to the CEO of Singapore to basically confirm again. So she called this time around through the official channel, right? Official line to verify, did you request for the transfer? And then the CFO basically, the CEO basically confirms, oh, he didn't request any such transaction. So she immediately calls back to JP Morgan, asks them to cancel this transaction. And luckily, there was no financial loss in this case, right? Luckily. But this whole incident, which happened last year, basically led to an internal investigation. And after this investigation this year, Maybank decided to let go of the CFO, right? So this is someone at a very high level of this organization, a very, very big organization. And also, they're still able to get compromised in this way, right? So this shows us the level of security that we are into this age, right? So now we also want to understand a bit about email threats, right? Or the threats. So we talk about the 13 common known threats, right? So of course we have the spam, malwares, data exfiltration, URL phishing, lateral phishing, spear phishing, service impersonation, domain impersonation, business email compromise or BEC, spams, blackmail, account takeover, and also conversation hijacking, right? So of course, we don't have time to go through all of them individually, but we will just discuss some of them and see how we can basically mitigate against such, right? So one thing to also note is over 75% of cyber attacks actually start with opening a malicious email, right? So even though there's this threats, usually it starts with someone opening email. So that's why human error or human being is the critical layer here. And 94% of malware is delivered through email attachments. So gone are the days whereby malwares are spread through like CD-ROMs or pen drives or all this. Now, of course, everything usually comes through email. So that is why email is very, very critical in today's world, right? So talking about the first one, which is spam, right? So spam, of course, is unsolicited bulk emails, right? So someone is sending you an email, someone you don't know, right? Randomly sends you an email claiming to be someone or claiming to ask you for certain information or action, right? So what is the impact of spam? 53% of email messages are spam messages. And of course, it affects productivity, which basically is a low productivity, and impacts the network traffic, right? So all these 53% of emails, imagine, are all spam emails. So how does it work, right? So basically, in a spam email attack, of course, they will send you an email claiming to be a certain party. For in this example here, we have someone claiming to be, like, for example, from a bank or from, let's say, LHDN. They will ask you for certain information to get you to reveal to them. So in this case, they're asking for bank details, right, or contact number or address. They will solicit for information, right? So this is one case. Another case, of course, the very common one, malware, right? So whereby malware, of course, is a huge or is a volumetric malware, right? So it's designed to spread in large quantity, and of course, exploits are known, right? So of course, zero-day malwares do exist whereby they are not known, so exploits are unknown vulnerability, and also no signature or heuristics are available. So if you know how antivirus works, normally antivirus, they will be able to detect malwares or viruses using the known signatures, right? So in cases whereby there are unknown signatures, then antiviruses are not able to detect, right? Then you have, of course, URL attacks, so URLs that actually point to malicious website or payload. So what is the impact of malware? Of course, 94% of malware is delivered through email, and $9 billion in losses in ransomware in 2019, right? So I believe this ransomware thing started around 2016, 2017. We started to hear about ransomware, and it keeps on growing in very huge quantities, right? Every day, there's huge numbers of ransomware going on. And in Malaysia, in fact, I can tell you for a fact, there is a lot more ransomware cases that happen. A lot more organizations have been victim of ransomware, but you don't hear about it in the news or in the media because they don't disclose, right? So usually it's sorted in-house. Maybe they get a forensic expert or specialist to do investigations. And in some cases, they will pay the ransom. In some cases, they will not. So like one of the case, which is the most recent one, is Malaysia Airport Holding Berhad, MAHB, right? Whereby there's a case of ransomware that was able to affect the Malaysia airports, and they were able to stop the operations of the airport, right? Flights were delayed, canceled, a very huge impact and very concerning issue, right? So usually cases like this happen a lot more frequent than we know. So of course we have data exfiltration, right? So in this case, data is copied or retrieved from a remote system with or without the user's consent, right? So sometimes it can happen maliciously or accidentally, right? So basically someone is able to copy or steal data, right, from the user. So of course the impact, the average cost of data breach was about $3.92 million in 2019. How does it work? So in this case, of course, there will be malware or phishing email sent out. It always starts with an email, right? Whereby someone will send a fake email or malicious email. Then, of course, it hits the server and the database. And of course, it goes to the FTP email and all this. Then the data is actually accessed and sent to the attacker. So it is a more complex or a bit more advanced kind of attack, right? It requires a lot more skills and technology to implement. Right? Then we have the very common one, business email compromise, BEC, right? Whereby in this case, first they will require a few steps and a lot of effort for the attacker to perform, whereby first they will identify a target, usually a very high level target within the organization, someone like a CEO, CFO, and someone at that level, right? Like the case of Maybank, right? Now, of course, they will do some grooming, right? Analyzing the email communication, but basically some preparation. Then they directly make a request, right? So in this case, for example, like the case for Maybank, whereby they'll ask you for payment or transfer or something like that, right? So they request for payment, right? So this is an example, right? And how to basically identify this kind of case of business email compromise, right? So first thing, you have to see the impersonation of the domain, right? The sender's domain, right? So usually the best practice is we receive an email. You have to first always be on alert. When you receive an email, don't just assume the email says it's from, let's say, my CEO. You shouldn't just assume that it's from that CEO in particular, right? You always have this kind of zero trust mindset, right? So you identify, you realize they will impersonate the senders, right? And of course, they will always have a sense of urgency, right? Because, hey, I want this now, right? And it will come from a very high level authority, someone like a CEO, C-level or director, right? So, or your boss, your immediate superior. In such cases, normally they will do some investigation on your organization, right? Maybe go to your LinkedIn, your Facebook, your social media to understand who is your boss. How is the corporate structure or organizational structure within your organization, right? They will understand this person reports to this person, and they will actually send an email, right, that pretends to be your immediate superior, right, sending you this and asking you for such a certain transaction. We have seen a lot of cases of this in our day-to-day practice. I can just share one of the example whereby there is incidents whereby a very big organization is trying to purchase a smaller subsidiary organization. All right. So in that case, they were in negotiation and all that, but then suddenly there is an email coming from the CEO of the parent company sending out to the CFO, right? So that email is basically authorizing the CFO to proceed to make the purchase of that subsidiary or that smaller organization, right? But Luckily, this CFO has been working together with this CEO for a very long time. He knows his pattern, the way he writes. So he understands the email just says, please proceed to purchase this company. But this person knows that my CEO doesn't write this way, right? Normally he will write, he will say, please proceed, but make sure A, B, C, D, D, D. He will be very detailed and give a lot of remarks or comments, right? So just from that, it triggers this CFO's basically triggers them, and then the CFO walks into the CEO office. Did you reply my email? But then the CEO says, I didn't even see your email. I didn't receive any email from you, right? So in this case, it's a case of BEC, whereby someone is also able to impersonate an attacker and basically impersonate the CEO and send that email, right, to authorize the transaction. So that is also one of the case, like for impersonation as well. So service impersonation can be also very tricky to identify. So for example, someone sends you an email, that pretend to be, let's say, Windows or any of your HR system or procurement portal or e-leave management, right? You receive an email, let's say from HR, that says, we have a new HR portal, right? Click this link to update your password or to register your user account, or maybe the email comes from Microsoft that says you need to reset your password, right? So you go to the page, first thing, there's no malicious, right? And of course, it's hosted on a reputable domain. And of course, the usual email address and landing page, right? So at first you think, hey, this is something not suspicious or something like that, but you have to be very careful, right? It could be an impersonation. So sometimes one of the things that attackers will do is what we call a homograph attack, whereby they can basically modify, or they create a domain that is very similar to a genuine one, right? So for example, they modify, let's say, facebook.com, right? So instead of Facebook with a FACEBOOK, instead of B, they will change the letter to D, for example, right? Facebook, right? So if you're not careful, you just rush in, you just click, and then you go to that website, then you go to the Facebook or the fake website, right? These are the ways that they kind of impersonate as well. Of course, account takeover is also another threat, right? So whereby they're able to infiltrate the organization or the user, they're able to get the credentials or compromise the credential. Of course, they do some reconnaissance, understand the flow of the organization, understand how the whole internal structure works, right? Then they'll harvest the credentials and they proceed to do monetization. So monetization also can be at different formats, right? So in certain cases, they will actually can distribute a malware, or basically can commit a fraud, or they can also do conversation hijacking, like in the case that we saw earlier, whereby the attacker took over the CEO's email and sends the email to the CFO asking them to make a payment or transaction, right? So this is something that also happens a lot. For this case, one of the incidents that we have also seen basically is a situation whereby there's an email sent from the GM of a legal department to the finance department asking them to make a payment or transaction, right? But luckily, that GM of legal department, the person that was impersonated, is away on holiday in Australia, right? So the finance sees an email from the GM of legal and she knows this person is on leave, right? And it's probably not the kind of person that when they are on leave, they will still be doing a lot of work or something like that. So she, of course, senses a red flag. So she immediately calls to the GM of legal. Did you ask me to make a payment? Of course, immediately this person says, no, I'm away on holiday. I don't even have access to my emails, right? So these are the kind of things that happen whereby if someone is able to impersonate or even do a takeover, they can perform such kind of attacks as well, right? Of course, lateral phishing, right, is basically whereby they have already compromised or taken advantage of one attack, then they will use it to do further attacks, right? So it uses traditional protection techniques, right? So inbound attacks from external sources, there's no spoofing or forgery. Of course, there's also the compromised email account, and they provide information for targeted attacks. Conversation hijacking is one of the ones that we have given example, whereby also there's communication between two people and someone is able to hijack the conversation, or they're able to slot themselves in between these two conversations, right? So For example, one of the cases here is like a vendor client relationship whereby the vendor sends an email, an invoice via email, right, on the first day, and then on the third day, the confirmation confirms that they have received the invoice, right? And then day 15 or 15 days later, the vendor sends a new invoice, right? This is already a red flag or something suspicious, right? Right? And then on day 16, the vendor provides updated account details for a wire transfer. So this is also a case whereby we have seen this case. Also, we've worked in a similar case in the real world scenario whereby a party is trying to purchase a piece of real estate, right, in Europe, and whereby they are still at negotiation stages, right? But then they have come to a stage whereby the amount is agreed and all that. Then they have decided to do an escrow payment, right? So whereby they pay a certain down payment of the real estate property's price, and once the transaction has been completed, then they release the balance of the payment from the escrow, right? So this user or this attacker was able to slot themselves in between the conversation, right, whereby they send an amended invoice with a new account details or with a new payment details, right? So let's say the initial transaction is I'm supposed to pay down payment of 30%, right? And then the rest will be held in escrow, right? And invoice, everything has been confirmed. Then suddenly a new email comes in. It says, oh, due to certain reason, we have changed our account details. Please find the updated invoice with our new account information or new bank information, right? So this is a very real case that also happened that we have worked on for a forensic case. And in this case, there was also a loss of financial there was financial losses, unfortunately, because when that attacker actually sent the amended invoice, they sent the invoice with a Cayman Islands account, right? So the account is based in Cayman Islands. So of course, if you know Cayman Islands, this has to do with very complex financial laws and all that. So it's very difficult and tedious process to trace back those funds, right? So this is something that happens a lot. So an example here that we have just mentioned, right? They will impersonate the domain, right? They're able to slot themselves in between conversation. They will impersonate the sender or the domain, right? They will reply to the existing conversation. So this means that this person is already able to compromise the email, and they have basically slotted themselves in between, and they pretend to be the party. They're not even sending a new email, or they're not even changing the conversation from a different standpoint. They just reply from an existing conversation. Right, so this gives more legitimacy and more peace of mind to the user. They have been emailing these guys for months. Then there's a new email coming from them. Of course, I might not be so curious to think that this is something suspicious because the chain of email tallies, right? And then they will request changes in the payment method, right? And if someone is not careful, they will immediately take action. And of course, there's losses in this case. One thing to keep in mind, because the examples I've been given are mostly financial related, but we shouldn't always think that these attacks happen for only financial gains, right? A lot of times the hackers will attack us is not for financial gains, right? Or it's not for money. They're not trying to steal funds. Sometimes they can be hacktivists, right? Whereby they're trying to do some political activities, or sometimes they can be even an ex-employee that is not happy with the employer or with the organization. After he left, he can try to do something, or there can be so many different reasons, or sometimes they just want to steal information, right? They want to use your information to do further attacks, or they want to even compromise your machine, then to use your machine to do attacks on other people. So they basically use you to hide their tracks. So there's a lot of things that they can be the reason for the attackers to attack us. It's not just for financial gain. Right. So just looking at what we have right now in terms of conventional security practices or native security practices that you have, as opposed to this 13 existing threats, 13 known threats, right? So let's say looking at like spam and also data exfiltration and also malware, right? So usually the native security that you have in place, right, like your existing O365 or those security that you have in place right now, it can help you to protect against this less complicated kind of attacks or threats, right? And it also partially protects you against like URL phishing. But when it comes to more advanced, right, like maybe scamming or maybe spear phishing or maybe domain impersonation, or even, for example, like fraud impersonation, extortion, the various other kind of threats, right? You basically still are vulnerable. You're not able to be protected from those kind of attacks, right? Especially the more complex one, like an attack takeover and like an account takeover, right? So of course, these threats are also constantly evolving, right? So we also have to look for ways to stay ahead and to protect ourselves. So that brings me to the solutions, right? So talking about what solutions that we have or how we can basically tackle these threats, we basically want to introduce a product, Barracuda Email Protection. Some of you might have heard of Barracuda, right? They have been in existence since the early 2000s, right? I think about 2003, 2002, right? Very long time. They actually started out as in this industry in a very solid track record, right? So they have actually their own email security protection solutions, right? Whereby it can help you to do threat prevention, right? So let's take an example whereby, let's say an email comes in, right? An illegitimate email, right? Comes in. It will basically goes through this Barracuda email gateway security, right? Whereby they will analyze whether it's a spam or malware or even it's a 0-day vulnerability. It will analyze against all these kind of threats. Then only it will allow it to release into the mailbox. And this is all API based, right? So basically it uses this API to integrate to your email, and then it will analyze and also help you to protect, right, against these threats. This also provides superior technology, right? So of course, now we're in the age of AI, so we have to use AI to fight AI, right? As I mentioned earlier, the threats are evolving. The hackers are smart. They are not only dependent on their skills or their own not conventional tools, they are also employing AI and very advanced technologies, right? So what makes this AI-based inbox defense superior is basically it identify graph technology, right? An identity graph technology, basically. So the solution actually studies the historical communication pattern within your organization, and then it builds an identity graph for an individual, right? Based on their unique behavior, right? So it studies how each particular person sends an email. Let's say this person logs in usually from, let's say, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. to 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at night or at the evening, right? They don't send email at night, right? So suddenly there's an email at 2 a.m. from this person, then you can see this is something, it's a red flag. It's very unusual. So this technology will help you to flag things like this, right? So by understanding basically what good email communication looks like, the solution actually can quickly identify anomalies, and also it can flag suspicious behavior, including logins to prevent spread of an email attack, right? So basically it's anomaly behavior studying. So as I mentioned, it's AI-based as well. So AI-based inbox defense. So it helps you to stop targeted attacks, right? So by employing this AI, right, which integrates to your API and will help you to analyze and better protect against these email threats, right? So it will protect against impersonation, right? Of course, it will build models, right? Like based on the 13 known threats and analyze, and then of course, real-time analysis, right? So it's not like it will keep on delaying your emails and things like that. It's analyzing on real-time basis. And of course, threat remediation. So in certain cases whereby remediation is required, it will help you to automate real-time remediation, all based on AI as well. And of course, continuous learning. So this basically integrates awareness training as part of the product as well, right? As we know, with all of these threats going on and all that, human being is the most important part. And we also know that there is no patch for human error. So what can we do is to train them, train our users, keep on training them, make sure that they're aware and make sure that they know how to identify these fake emails or phishing emails or spams and how they should respond or how they should highlight or inform or notify the relevant parties, right? So training is very, very critical. So this model also integrates security awareness training for the users as well, right? So which provides this feedback loop and continuous retraining as well. So it also incorporates account takeover protection. So at the heart of the defense strategy is the use of AI, right? Whereby it helps to prevent account takeover. So the AI system is actually trained to detect and also respond to patterns of malicious behavior before they can harm your network. So for example, it can also detect like suspicious login attempts. So they track unusual login patterns that could actually indicate unauthorized access attempts, right? So let's say, for example, I have logged in let's say right now I'm at the office. I've logged in at 3 p.m. at my office. Then suddenly I log in again, maybe after 10 minutes, I log in again in Europe, right? So this is something very unusual. 10 minutes, there is no way for me to travel from here to Europe in 10 minutes, right? From Malaysia to Europe, for example. So what does that mean? Of course, it's a suspicious detected behavior. It can help you detect that, right? So for example, like this impossible travel, like the rule change. So let's say any unauthorized attempt to change system or account rules, right? It triggers immediate alert. Someone immediately trying to change the rules, it will trigger immediately, right? It will also help you to monitor sent messages, right, for outbound communication for anomalies that suggest takeover, such as mass email or messages containing suspicious links, right? So let's say suddenly there's an email from my outbox sent out to 400 people, right? Like one of the cases that happened to one of our colleagues, basically from his inbox, someone was able to perform that kind of phishing, right? They sent out to about 400 users, right? So that is something, of course, very suspicious, right? And of course, there's more, including like unusual file access patterns, right? Or changes in behavior that are indicative of a compromised account, right? So any suspicious activity, it will highlight. Right? So of course, all this remediation as well is also very important. So we help you to remediate using IT alerts, built-in playbooks whereby you can pre-program what needs to happen in case of certain incidences, and of course, remediate malicious email, right? Alert external users and more. So if let's say there's a third party that needs to be alerted immediately, like for example, a SOC team or something, it will immediately notify, right? So this takes measures to also prevent lateral movement, right? So within the network by flagging and isolating malicious internal communication. Right? So this is actually crucial to prevent the spread of an attack within the organization, right? So finally, of course, remediation is something that usually people will have to do manually and is very tedious and lengthy because you have to keep on responding to these alerts, right? It will lead to alert fatigue. But this, in this case, is automated. It will help you to remediate and take the necessary steps. So each of these components is actually integral for the whole strategy in managing the security of your emails. So how does Barracuda actually help to train the users, right, to spot malicious email? As I mentioned earlier, it comes together with security awareness as part of the solution. So you can actually subscribe to the security awareness training, whereby this is actually video-based training or online-based training. They will help you to do simulated phishing of real-time attacks, right? Because one thing with users is a lot of organizations today, they have this practice of already sending out phishing or awareness letters or notification to their users. Some they will send out once weekly, once monthly, every quarterly, for example. Some organizations have even the practice of performing security awareness training every year, right? Every year, for example, you conduct a training internally. You get a trainer to train them 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour session. But there's one thing about users or people, right? They might not take it seriously. Right? Because if they think, oh, this is just a compliance or mandatory requirement from HR, I need to attend this training, right? They don't take it seriously. But when you do a phishing simulation on them, or when you test them, in this case, you will know who are those that are actually following, who are those that are implementing the best practices, and who are those that are actually even paying attention during the training, right? So, of course, you can do simulated phishing attacks, whereby you simulate a real-world cyber attack. For example, craft an email that comes from a third party or even your internal department to all the users, right? A very credible scenario, and from there you will see how many of them will actually fall victim to this, right? So of course, it will help you to analyze, providing all the metrics, right, from the campaign so that you can plan for the next campaign. You know who are those failing this campaign, and the next campaign, who are those need to go for training, advanced training, and who are those that have passed, and then you can keep on monitoring to see the weak employees within the organization, right? So you can keep on educating, right? So in a way, this is something very critical, right? Well, very crucial in today's world. let's say organizations that have a lot of users or a lot of staff, you cannot individually track every person, right? The best that IT can do or the HR team can do is they will arrange training, right? And they'll make it mandatory for people to attend the training. But to really track and to know who are those that are the culprits or the weak parts on your cybersecurity, you have to train, you have to fish them. So you do this simulated phishing, test their awareness level. You can arrange some presentation of the reports, and then you can highlight to them. We have done this phishing attack, let's say last month, and out of 100 staff, 30% of you fail, right? So this 30% of people need to go for a special training, right? Or remediation training. Then after that, after maybe a few months, you test them again, do a phishing again, see how many of them fail. So unfortunately, this is the world that we live in. It's an ongoing process, non-stop. We have to keep on doing this whole cycle. We cannot give up because the hackers are constantly evolving, right? If we back off, they will take advantage. Right, and this training basically has what we call a multimodal, also multi-country content as well, right? So just don't think because it's a Barracuda, it might maybe too internationalized or something. No, there's actually multi-country support content, right? So like, for example, videos or training will be like 3 to 5 minutes, right? Talk about phishing, for example, talk about spamming, different kind of contents, right? And then also infographics will be provided as well, right? Threat spotting guides, right? So basically advisory notices and all that will be sent out, and curriculums as well. So this is all built into security awareness training. All right. So of course, with the advanced anti-phishing protection and security awareness training, this basically can help you to have some certain level of peace of mind. So as we wrap up, I just want to share with you one tool that you can use today to already identify any malicious or email threats within your organization, right? This is basically our giveaway for the session for today. So we actually can offer you a free email threat scan. So this is courtesy of Barracuda, right? Whereby we can actually scan your email right now to identify any gaps in your email security. You can find out the threats inside Microsoft 365 inboxes, right? See the threat visualized in multiple ways, and of course, get a shareable report about the threats. So if let's say today, after this session, you are thinking, hey, how secure is my email? Right? Just directly, you can sign up for this scan, right? Once you share the QR after this, you scan, you sign up for it, you will scan the email, your domain, and then send you the reports, right? So from there, that report you can actually utilize to know your current level of awareness or your current level of threat for your email. And you can also use that internally. Let's say you want to present to the management or to senior level to basically propose for security awareness training or this email security solution to be implemented, right? But of course, if the security email report is good, and you can also use that to share to your management that, oh, look, we are also very good, right? So the report will look basically something like this. So you have a summary basically of the outcomes, right? With a graphical representation of all the information, then also a look at your employees, right? So you will also get additional information like threats to your security will all be highlighted, and also the sources of attacks. So this is a very comprehensive, very detailed report. I will recommend everyone here to sign up for this, and it's a free thing. You can take advantage of it. There's no strings attached at all, right? I implore you to take advantage of this and check your current security awareness, your current security threat level for your emails. All right. So that brings me to the last slide for this session. Basically, we're sharing the QR here. So we have two QR codes, right? So the first one here basically gets you to sign up for the Barracuda free email security threat, right? The one I just discussed just now. You can scan this QR. It will take you to the page by Barracuda. You sign up directly with Barracuda and get this free email threat scanner. The second QR basically takes you to a landing page where you can sign up. If let's say you need a free consultation by Conditions Zebra, we are offering a 1-hour free consultation to sit with you and understand your current security threats, especially to your email. We will help you to come out with the ways or roadmap to improve on this your cybersecurity or on your email security as a whole as well. So thank you so much for joining today's webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop it on the chat. We'll be jumping to the Q&A session now. But meanwhile, I will leave this QR code on the screen. You can feel free to scan as we answer the Q&As. Okay, let's look at the chat, see, okay, we have quite a number of comments and questions here. Okay, so question from Melvin. If you are an existing O365 user and have administrative rights to your email, please feel free to sign up for the free email threat scan. Yeah, so one thing to highlight, this free email threat scan basically applies to only O365 users. Yeah, sorry to say, so for non-O365 users, I would recommend you to upgrade basically to O365 so you can have a lot of this security benefits as well, and you can as well get the benefits for the free scans. So do we have any questions or any comments? Please feel free to drop on the chat box. Okay, so far any questions? I mean, not necessarily has to be related to O365. If let's say you need any consultation or you'd like to know more about email security or awareness training, you can drop your questions. It doesn't have to be purely related to the O365 email. Okay, we have a comment from Lee. So Mr. Lee is asking, any free email threat scan for non-O365? Unfortunately, we don't have that at the moment. But one thing we can do as Condition Zebra, we can offer you one thing, a free consultation, right? We can happy to sit with you to do a consultation on your non-O365 email security. And as well, we are also happy to provide you a free email phishing exercise, right? So the free email phishing is basically courtesy of Condition Zebra. Will help you to do a very short email phishing test or simulation on your organization. So we can offer you up to 100 users for free, right? But just for one round. So that will help you to identify who are those weak in cybersecurity within your organization. So that is open for everyone. It's not only limited to O365 users. So if you're interested in the free email phishing test as well, you scan the QR code on the right, on this QR code. So you sign up for an inquiry, and then we will reach out to you to arrange for it as well. So far, do we have any more questions? Or if you have any questions not related to email security as well, you can share with us, let's say on cybersecurity. Yeah, we're happy to answer as well. Okay, thanks, Mr. Lee. Thanks, Mr. Chris. So if we have no further questions, we will proceed to end the session. We'd like to thank you again for joining us, and we hope you had a very beneficial afternoon with us today, and wish you a happy weekend. Thank you.